Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. In today's video I'm going to be using Aqua Cast water activated casting compound with resin, and I'm going to be doing it in two ways. I'm going to be letting it cure and then pouring resin on, but then I'm going to do a second project where I pour the resin and the Aqua Cast both at the same time while they're both uncured, and to see what happens when they mix together and what effect I will get at the end. I'll also be mixing neon pigment powders with the Aqua Cast because I want to know, can you make casting compounds neon, or will it just look like a pastel colour? Let's find out. Right, this video comes with a safety warning. You're going to need to shield your eyes or just kind of squint them a little bit for what's about to come. How bright are those? I mean, seriously, how bright. They're amazing, aren't they? Those are the pigments I'm going to be using today, and they're the Neon Max pigment powders from Epoxy. I'm also going to be using my jar mould from Devon Dotting, which is one of their new ones, and it's a really cute mould. And I'm going to be using Aqua Cast casting compound, which you may have seen me use a few weeks ago in another video. Epoxy had sent me some, just a sample to try out, and I loved it so much. I bought 25 kilograms of it. Yeah, that was a lot. A lot of casting compound to store, but you know, it works out better if you buy something in large amounts. It works out cheaper, doesn't it? And I knew I was going to be using a lot, so yeah, I got 25 kilograms. Anyway, let's get on with the project. I'm making 3 pots today because I had 3 pots of the neon pigment and I wanted to have 1 pot using each pigment. Now, before filming this, I'd already made 2 pots to have a practice to see how it looked, and as I was making those pots I weighed how much I was putting in so that each pot would be identical. So as I was pouring in the casting compound, I would weigh it to see how much I'd used. And so in this instance, I already knew exactly how much to mix up, but I will show you a little bit later on in my second part of the project how to use the online calculator for calculating the volume of Aqua Cast on the Epoxy website. It's really useful. The mixing ratio for Aqua Cast is 100 parts powder to 35 parts water. So the water is 35% of the weight of the powder. But like I said, I'll show you how you can work it out really easily a little bit later on. So it's simply a case of measuring out your water on your scales and then pressing the tare button to get it back down to 0. And then very carefully, a little bit at a time, add your powder until you've got the right amount before mixing it up really well. Now, the great thing about this casting compound, it's very much like Jesmonite or Hydroflow, which are 2-part casting compounds where you get the liquid that you add to the powder. When you buy it, it comes in, you get a bottle with the liquid in and the powder. But with this one, all the magical goodness that's in the liquid has been fused into the powder already. So you don't need to have the liquid, you can just mix it with water. So in essence, it's just the same thing as Hydroflow or Jesmonite or other 2-part casting compounds. It's just the same. The only difference is you're adding water instead of the acrylic polymer liquid. And one of the reasons I prefer that is because when you're mixing the powder with water, the water is so much thinner and it dissolves the powder much more easily. You know, all the little lumps just dissolve and disperse straight away because obviously water is so thin. But if you're mixing powder with a thicker liquid, it's much more difficult to mix. So that's one of the reasons why I love this Aquacast. Anyway, once I'd mixed it all up, I added a spoonful of the pigment powder. This one is Egyptian blue and I really love the colour. You may already know that if you're using pigment powders in casting compounds like this, the finished result will always be a lot more pastel in colour than if you were using something like a jasmonite pigment, which gives you a very dark, intense colour. And so I wasn't quite sure how this would turn out, but I was really amazed actually that how well this pigment powder mixed with it and gave such a lovely bright colour. I thought that neon effect might be kind of lost on it, if you know what I mean, but it really wasn't. And I just added a little bit more just to make it even brighter. And yeah, I really love it. So, as I said before, I'd already made 2 other pots while practicing with this, and I wrote down how much I'd used. So I had it on the scales, and as I poured it in, I took note of how much had gone in, and it was 38 grams. So this time I'm going to pour in 38 grams again, and that way you can make sure your pots are identical. Because once this casting compound has cured, I'm going to be adding a layer of resin. It's only going halfway up. I'm not filling it up to the top. And because of that, I didn't want the Aquacast to be touching the sides of the mould, and I just poured it directly into the middle and let it find its own way down. That way the bit of the mould where the resin is going to be touching was clean and it didn't get the Aquacast on. However, if you do find that you get some on the sides where you don't want it, you can just take a little paintbrush or a long paintbrush and just pop it into the side and just wipe away the little bit where you've made them, where you've made the sides mucky. Once I'd finished pouring, I gave it a very gentle tap on the sides to release any bubbles, and I kind of lifted it up and just kept dropping it a little bit to help it to level out and find its own level. And that works really well actually. It finds its own level really well. And I did check, you can't see on camera, but I had a look inside to check that the sides of the mould were nice and clean where the resin was going to be touching. And then I just left it to cure for about an hour. And then I did the same thing with the lid. And as you can see, the lid for this pot mould has a ridge on it, and you can see that ridge on the mould. And I was just working up to that first line, so I didn't really need to weigh this one. I just needed to keep putting it in gently and, carefully, not getting on the rest of the mould, and just tapping it until it evened out and reached that ridge, and then just left it. After an hour, the Aquacast had cured and it was time to add the resin. Now, I've used neon pigment powders before, and yeah, I haven't tried any from this brand before, but I do know that they do have a tendency to be a little bit lumpy. I don't know why. I think it must be just what's in them to make them so bright. They just don't dissolve as well as, normal pigment powders. So a way to get around that is to have an empty pot, put your pigment powder into the pot, then add a tiny bit of isopropyl alcohol, mix it to a paste, and then add your resin to that and mix it up, and you won't have any lumps. One of my viewers actually gave me that tip the last time I used neon powders in a video, because I did have that problem, especially with the blue. The blue tends to be the worst for that. But yeah, it really solves the problem really well. So once that was all mixed, it was just a case of pouring it in, as simple as that. And then I left it until the next day before demoulding. I remembered that I had this long tray mould which would be perfect for my 3 pots, but I needed to know how much Aquacast to mix. The mould was too big to put onto the scales, so I took a jug of water and weighed that, and then I made a note of the weight. Then I took that jug of water and poured water into the mould up to the point where I wanted it to be filled. Then I weighed the jug of water again to see what was left. Then I subtracted that weight from the original figure to find out how many grams of water were actually in the mould. Then I went to the Elichem website, to their calculator, and simply typed in the mould volume which I just got into that box there, and then straight away it shows you how much powder and how much water you need. How easy is that? And you see the bit where it says Aquacast, if you press the arrow you've got the option of finding out the calculations for the other product, which is Hydroflow, and that's the 2-part one that they've got. Then, just in the same way as before, I measured out my water, then measured out the Aquacast, all in the same pot, very carefully. And the tub that you'll see me using isn't the tub that you get when you order 25 kilograms like I did. It was such a massive tub, I had to transfer some of it into a smaller tub, so it was just a little bit easier to handle at my art table. Okay then, let me tell you what my plan was. Now, you know me, I do like to experiment, and what I really wanted to know was what would happen if I poured in the Aquacast and whilst it was still wet, added resin as well, epoxy resin. So my plan was to mix this up, pour it into 3 pots and add the 3 colours so that they were all in the tray together. I thought it would be really nice and bright and colourful. But then I wanted to do exactly the same thing in 3 pots with epoxy resin and the same 3 colours, because these pigment powders can be used in Aquacast and in epoxy resin. At this point I'd already prepared the epoxy resin with the colours in, because once this had, been mixed, I needed to use it. I didn't want to leave it standing while I started mixing epoxy resin because it would start to cure. So yeah, the resin was already ready and I kind of filled it up fairly randomly. I had the idea that each pot would stand next to its own colour on the tray, if that makes sense. So I kind of split it into 3 colour sections so that the pot could stand on its own colour. And then I left it like that, how it's kind of piled up, and then added the resin and then banged the table so that, how the Aquacast found its own level before. And there we go, you see, it's finding its own level. And that way they're going to merge into each other. And I couldn't wait, honestly, couldn't wait to find out what would happen. Now, do you see I'm taking some epoxy resin out of the hole bit with the syringe? That's because I was having an issue with the mould, and I'll explain that later. But anyway, let's just get on with this bit, what I'm doing now. I had some left over, so I took this pendant mould, which is from Devon Dotting, and I filled it just with random bits of Aquacast and resin, and just to see what would happen. I just thought it'd be interesting. It might turn out well, it might not, but it's better than leaving bits in the pot and letting it go to waste, isn't it? If you don't try, you don't know. That's my motto. After everything was poured, I left it until the next day, but I was really curious because at the moment you can see it doesn't look great, does it? I was really curious to see what it would look like on the other side. So, as if by magic, it's the next day. And let's get these things out of the moulds. We'll start with the pot. Now this pot mould from Devon Dottin wasn't designed to be used with resin. It can be used with resin, no problem, but it's not shiny on the inside. It's got kind of a matte finish, so the pot will be matte, not shiny. But I actually really like it. It's got like a frosted glass type effect, and there we have it, look. And you can just see how the resin has seeped down the side of the Aqua Cast a little bit. But I don't mind that. It just gives it a bit of character. And let's have a look at the lid. For the lid, I'm just going to push from the bottom. I'm not going to pull at that resin in case it was still a little bit bendy. I didn't want to bend the lid. Yeah, so I just pushed it from the bottom and let it pop out. And there we have it. I'm really pleased. And I did exactly the same thing with the other two pigments. I've got a pink one and a yellow one. And I think they look so good together. What a really bright and cheerful set. I think they're great. It's not my usual colour scheme at all, but I really do like it. I'm happy. So yeah, let's have a look at the tray. This could, this could go either way, couldn't it? Yeah, I'll let you be the judge. And as I said before, I had some issues. You know that bit that goes up to make the hole in the tray? It had kind of turned in on itself before I started pouring, and I hadn't noticed. And so, yeah, I had to deal with that afterwards, and it kind of got stuck. But I gently managed to get it off, but next time I'll be a lot more careful to make sure the mould is ready. So anyway, let's have a look. Oh, yeah, come on, get off. Get off. Yeah, a little pull. Oh, it was just such a pain to get off. I got there, I promise. Right, are you ready? Here it comes. And we're going to turn it over. Come on, Lou, hurry up. There it is. What do you think? It's all right, isn't it? We've got a few interesting effects going on there. And I like the way you can see through bits of it, where the resin is, and where they've mingled together. I think it could be a thing, I think I quite like it. What do you think? Let's have a look at these though. Don't expect too much from these, honestly. So yeah, I did forget to bash it, bash the table and tap the sides of the moulds so they're a bit bubbly, and yeah, they're all right, aren't they? They're different. Yeah, like I said before, if you don't try, you don't know, do you? And I think definitely it's got potential if it was done with a little bit more care and consideration rather than just shoving it all in like I did. But yeah, definitely got potential. Right then, before I show you the full set together, there's some finishing to do. Now, with everything that you put into a mould, you will get a ridge around the edge, unless you fill it right to the top and it's kind of domed. But if you don't do that, you're going to get a little ridge, and it's best to sand it away. I just use a nail file because it can be quite sharp and you wouldn't want anyone cutting themselves, would you? So yeah, just sanding the edges, and then I need to sort out that hole and get it back again, because at the moment it's not a hole. Now, I've got this attachment for my Dremel. I've got no idea what its proper purpose is, what it's supposed to be used for. It's not a drill, it looks like some sort of grinder. But you get these things with Dremels, don't you? I don't know if any of you have got one, I'm sure you have. And they come with all manner of tools and you have no idea what they all do. Well, I don't, anyway. So I just used it because I thought it looked like it would do the job. It might be meant for something completely different, but if it does the job, it doesn't matter, does it? And you can't see what I'm doing because of the angle of the camera. But what I did was I put it to where the hole should be and I made the hole again. And then to finish it off, I used the sander attachment to neaten it up, and it was as good as new and you wouldn't have known there was a problem. Next, I took a kitchen sponge. Really, I should have taken off the scourer from the back because you don't want that on. You don't want it scratching your finished piece, do you? But I was being lazy and I was rushing, so I didn't take that bit off. Anyway, I squirted on some Hydroflow sealer, which is also from Elichem, and it can be used for Hydroflow and Aqua Cast. Or if you use something else, you know, any other casting compound, I'm sure it would work too. And just rubbed it all over with the sponge and the sealer. And then it's best to let that dry for an hour or so and then give it another 2 coats. Then I repeated the process for the pots and let them dry. It's best to do it 3 times. Give everything 3 coats to make sure it's properly sealed, and then they're ready. Here they are. Don't they look bright and cheerful? I'm so happy with these, and it seems so fitting that it was an extra sunny morning and the light was streaming through the window onto them, because they give you such a sunny, happy feel, don't they? Love those colours. So that's it. We've reached the end of the video. What do you think? Do you like the resin with the Aqua Cast? I think it works really well, do you? It's really unusual. I might have to do a little bit more experimenting with that. Anyway, if you haven't already subscribed and you would like to do so, please do. And if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you again next time. Bye for now.